Welcome to the Den of Dissent. This is a show where we challenge the current culture and mainstream talking points of the day. What is the news telling us? What is the culture telling us? Where is our civilization headed? And by what standard do we judge these issues? Do you agree or do you dissent? Let's find out. Welcome back to the Den of Dissent. Today, I have special guest Ben McClintock. He is the founder of the Tree of Liberty Society. Ben has strong roots in the Liberty movement. He's the founder as well as membership coordinator and investigative reporter for the Tree of Liberty Society. Prior to that, he was a coordinator for the John Birch Society and co-founder of Defending Utah. Ben has also been featured in USA Today, Fox News, and many other regional newspapers. The Tree of Liberty Society is working from the national to the local level to educate citizens on the principles of liberty and expose those conspiring to take away our freedoms. Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming on today. So I wanted to just ask you about your organization. What inspired you to start your organization and what it's geared towards achieving?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are really focused on building the understanding as well as the application on the principles that have built free societies, as well as we're working to expose the satanic conspiracy that we face, but not only expose it. It doesn't do me any good to be the most informed person in the concentration camp, right? We can't just be like, I told you so. And so we are working to build an opposition to that conspiracy. And so, as I mentioned, I was a coordinator for the John Birch Society. I have a lot of background in that. Was kind of my foundations in building organization as well as understanding those principles and doing how to do the research necessary to find out what did the founding fathers actually do? Who inspired the founding fathers? What is this conspiracy that we faced? Is there any evidence for it? Is it all just a bunch of tinfoil hat nonsense, or are there actually confessions where people say, yeah, this is what we're doing? And so, and what I really appreciate, and I still love the John Birch Society, everything that they've done is really the foundations of what everybody else that talks about these things is doing. But what I was able to do, which is a little bit different because it's very hard for an organization like that to do this, was to show how organizations like the UN, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergers, the Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones, how are they influencing your community? Mm-hmm. And showing how this isn't stuff in DC or in New York, San Francisco. This is stuff happening right in your community. And that even if you're in a conservative state, I would say even especially if you're in a conservative state, that these wolves in sheep's clothing are pretending to be one thing with their words, but they're a part of an organization that I just referred to, and they are working to build globalism and bring globalism to your community, whether it's Agenda 2030. How are all these Agenda 2030 programs coming into these local communities that are supposed to be liberty-minded, pro-family, and things and anti-UN, but somehow all of their local officials are a part of it and bringing it into their communities? How did that happen?
Right.
And so with my book, Invasion, I show how that happens and how you can fight it in your local communities.
Okay. I wanted to get into your book, Invasion. With that, your book, Invasion, volumes 1 and 2, is talking about basically how to have influence in your community and weed out some of this globalist activity.
Yeah.
Okay.
First of all, you've got to understand it before you can take effective action, because these guys are really good at saying the things that they think you want to hear. Mm-hmm. And so you need to start identifying, what are their actions versus their words? What associations do they have? What are they actually doing? We have, just example after example of legislation that says one thing that does the exact opposite. A lot of times, like the Patriot Act or No Child Left Behind, these names that they give legislation are the exact opposite. So if you see like a bill that says defending the Constitution legislation, it's usually the exact opposite. It's actually working to weaken it in your area. Oh. And so identifying the people and the organizations that they're a part of And then based on that, now where do you go from there?
Okay. And are these people identifying themselves as CFR members? Now, before I get into that question,
Yeah,
some people listening might not even know what the CFR is, what the Council on
sure.
Foreign Relations is. So they know what the UN is, but for those that don't know,
Yeah,
the Council on Foreign Relations is a globalist think tank. It's been founded like in the early 1900s, I think. But
yep.
anyway, are they, when they pass these forms of legislation or they get involved with local communities, are they announcing themselves as CFR members?
No, of course, no. I mean, most people don't even know what that is, and
Right.
so they wouldn't do it for bragging reasons because it's not a way to brag. And then two, they don't want to announce themselves for those that do understand what it is. They don't. They come in there saying that they are pro local community, pro local control, pro constitution, pro founding fathers. That's how they present themselves as. And so that's why it's essential that then we do the investigation to look into who these people are. And so we can say, okay, is there something fishy going on? What is the actual language? And so that would, because too often we assume that people are like us, where I am not out here to deceive people, and so nobody else is. And so we, because of that naivete, we fall into the trap of just believing everything at face value. And when, in a lot of legislation, what they have in the very beginning of a bill is definition of words. And it's like, well, we have dictionaries. Why do we need this? And so what they're doing is they're redefining words. So that way, when they say one thing, you think they mean this, but they actually mean this.
Okay.
And so helping people walk through that process to know what's really being said is really important and essential in defending liberty and not being taken off track and deceived into supporting something you never want to support.
Okay. Now, earlier you said that you were rooting out or you were exposing the satanic conspiracy. Um,
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to that, and I've watched some of your videos where you are doing just that. Um,
Uh-huh.
this this satanic conspiracy that a lot of people don't know
Yeah.
about. How deep rooted is it in our local communities?
Shockingly deep. I mean, and this is something that people will like to do, these false dichotomies where you either believe that everybody, 4 to 5 people on your block are a part of this, or nobody is. And that's it's a lot of people numerically, but it is a relatively small part of the population. And so it's a lot of times we, especially we want to think of it, oh, that's out in San Francisco, that's Nancy Pelosi, that's Joe Biden out in the East Coast. That's these few boogeymen that are the face of what we see of horrible things being promoted and talked about. Whereas if you look at actual legislation and what actually happens, the Democrats are really good at being the propagandists, promoting certain agendas and ideas, while the Republicans will pretend to fight it. But once they get into office, they're the ones that are actually leading the way and implementing what the Democrats were talking about. And so, but because they're always talking about how they're opposed to what the Democrats are doing, people don't understand, or they give excuses, or they just don't even know what's going on. And it's actually their team that's implementing everything they thought they were fighting against.
Okay. And so when we talk about the satanic influence in local communities and higher
Yeah.
up in the in different forms of government,
Yeah.
um, are we talking about like the man down the street who's going to the grocery store to buy groceries, or are we talking about our congressmen or our city council members who are engaged in this kind of darkness?
Right. So typically what these guys like to do. So, and why do I call it a satanic conspiracy? I think maybe a good foundation to start with, because you go back to even like Karl Marx, and Karl Marx himself said that he was, and this is what I believe about all, atheists really. There's no atheist out there that doesn't believe in God. They hate God. And so Karl Marx claimed to be an atheist, but he said that he loved Satan and that he wanted to promote Satan's program on the earth. And you see what's going on with, mentioned the Council on Foreign Relations. The Council on Foreign Relations was started as after World War II, when the defeat of the League of Nations came into play, and these globalists said we have to come together and we have to form an organization that will help get the American people on board, moving us towards one world government. And so that was the reason why they formed the Council on Foreign Relations. And one of the co-founders of the CFR is a guy by the name of Edward Mandell House. And he wrote a book called Philip Drew Administrator, where he said that he wants to build a world dreamed of by Karl Marx. And so that led to, after World War II, the American people being prepared enough where they accepted the United Nations as the world's last best hope for peace. And the conference where they in the United States, where they met to sign and organize officially form the United Nations, was in San Francisco, and it was held and it was hosted by, and the people promoting it and the people behind it were members of an organization called the Bohemian Club. Mm-hmm. And the Bohemian Club, they have members like the Bushes, Bush Senior, Bush Junior. You have Newt Gingrich. You have just people in academia, politics, business, and the arts that all come together. And they, every summer in July and August, they come to this retreat called the Bohemian Grove, where they worship these people that I named, right? And people like them come together to worship this owl god. And they pray to it, and they ask it to give them wisdom and to direct them. And this is the type of place where they did things like the planning of the nuclear bomb, and if they were behind the United Nations and things along those lines. Where so these people are not, well, they these individuals publicly pretend to be Christians or people of faith. In these meetings, they're actually worshiping these idols and these Babylonian gods. And so, and then you have the Bushes, and you have John Kerry, and you have others that are members of another satanic secret society called Skull and Bones, and where they lay naked in a coffin, and they do atrocious things, and they promise to build the New World Order. And so in the book, I document all of these things. Mm-hmm. And this isn't just claims that I'm making up, because if you've never heard this before, this probably sounds pretty fanciful and crazy, but this is all 100% documented, their own words, the organization's own words and their own documents. And it's all well footnoted, where you can go find all of the documentation to prove or disprove these things yourself. Right. And so really, when it comes down to it, all these organizations are all about building a new world order under Satan. Okay. And so even though they're not outwardly saying that, and so their influence in our local communities is done by your local city council or your local county commissioners, your state legislature, your governor. And so depending on the state, it is less likely for them to be in your city council. It's possible, but especially in a smaller town, less likely. County commissioners, a little bit more likely, because it has more power, and there's less counties than there are cities. Mm-hmm. And so it's easier for them to get their people into those positions. Okay. State legislatures, very much, and then governors, absolutely. Okay. I don't know without an exception that that's not the case. And then, of course, your congressmen and your U.S. senators, absolutely. Okay. And so that is the depth and breadth. Where no, it's not the guy you're going to your grocery store and checking out in line with. It's the people that are accumulating power in academia, in business, and in government.
Okay. Well said. There was a lot there I definitely want to pick at. When it comes to earlier, when you were talking about the Council on Foreign Relations, you cut out a little bit, but just to inform my audience, you said that Colonel Mandell House, who wrote the book, Philip Drew Administrator, who he advised Woodrow Wilson, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So he started.
Yeah, he was called Wilson's brain.
Wow. Yeah. And he wanted to develop a world government or structure in the likes of Karl Marx.
He said, as dreamed of by Karl Marx. Yes.
Okay. So that's what the CFR is, people. Just so you don't know, and we can talk about that a whole nother day, whole nother rabbit hole. You have videos on satanic ritual abuse in Utah.
Yeah.
You talk about Glenn Close and the
Glenn Pace,
Glenn Pace. I'm sorry, Glenn Pace.
not the actress.
Right. Glenn Pace and the Glenn Pace memo, which I didn't
Yeah.
hear about until I watched your video. So I went to look it up, and there's a little Wikipedia page that talks about the satanic panic of the 80s
Right.
and how Glenn Pace was there was information circulating that there was children being abused and there was some ritual abuse going on. And Glenn Pace, who was a member of the Latter-day Saints, wrote a memo. How did you stumble upon this information?
So yeah, this goes back to and even comes up to today with the Epstein files. But you go back around the same time period in Nebraska, there is what's called the Franklin cover up or the Franklin scandal. And there's a couple of books about that. There's a documentary called Conspiracy of Silence about it. And it's very much related to what's going on in the Western United States with the Glenn Pace memo. And what they all document is a network of satanic covens with people in positions of power and authority in religious institutions, government, and academia. And that they are using vulnerable children to engage in the most heinous of abuse.
Mhm.
One of the things that is covered in the Glenn Pace memo and that is linked directly, you can see the parallels to the Epstein files, is when he was interviewing the victims, he had individuals describe to him the things that they would do to get them to see Satan as their deliverer. And so what they would do is they would be torturing this young child, and then they would tell the child to cry out to Satan, to Jesus, and ask him to save you, and then nothing would happen. And then they would say, well, now cry out to Satan, and then a figure representing Satan would then come in and deliver them from what was going on, as a way to fracture their mind and to convert them to this network. And
Who
so,
were
go ahead.
children given this kind of testimony?
Yeah, children and people as adults later on as well. So what was going on with the Glenn Pace memo was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, they were having members of local units of their church in states like California, Utah, Arizona, Idaho, Washington, and in Mexico, coming to their local clergy and telling them these things that were happening. And so these bishops were writing letters to church headquarters asking them, what do we do about this? I don't even, how do we handle this? How do we help these people? Because they were also talking about how they were engaging in, because they were forced to, or because they were brainwashed into doing it, sacrificing children themselves, sacrificing babies. And so, are these people accountable? Asking just how do we handle this, basically? And so Glenn Pace, who was a member of one of their leading ecclesiastical bodies of the organization, was tasked with going out to these areas and interviewing these people. And is there anything to it? Is it true? Is it fake? Is it all just blown up out of proportion?
Mm-hmm.
Like the satanic panic stuff wants you to believe. And so he came to the conclusion, after investigating it and looking at evidence and looking, at the testimonies and of confessions, because people did start to confess to these things as well. And so he wrote a memo to church leadership above him of what he found, what was going on. And so, but this was not just there, but it was going on all over. And I've taken some notes because this goes back to also the Franklin cover-up, where this state legislator from Nebraska was investigating these same things going on in his state.
Frank DeCamp.
And he was friends with a guy by the name of William Colby. Interrupt me, please, if I'm just too long-winded, or if you want to ask a question or whatever.
No problem.
Clarification. But William Colby, from the former head of the CIA, he wanted DeCamp to leave this topic alone,
Mm-hmm.
and told them that if he continued to investigate, his life was at risk. So if this was just some kind of made up hysteria, a carefully crafted hoax, as the media would have you believe, why is the head of the CIA telling this guy that his life is in danger if he keeps going after it, right?
Question for you.
Yeah, please.
William Colby, the director of the
Yes.
CIA, told
Yeah.
Frank DeCamp to leave it alone?
Yeah, correct. State legislator from Nebraska, correct.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. So a guy by the name of Ted Gunderson, he was a 28-year FBI veteran, a special agent in charge of the Los Angeles Field Division of the FBI. And he spoke about another case of these same things going on, called the McMartin preschool case. This was in California. And he said with voluminous evidence against them, school operators were exonerated in January of 1990 on 52 counts of and the jury was deadlocked on 13 other counts. And then in an interview in 1990, Gunderson says, in the quote, in the McMartin case, for example, before any charges were filed against anyone, 460 complaints were filed with the Manhattan Beach Police. And then he says, are we to believe that 460 families fed their children the same story of ritualistic abuse on animals and animal sacrifice? And he pointed out that the crimes were committed in affluent areas that are typically very skeptical and not believing of conspiracy or of satanic ritual abuse, that kind of a thing. But you have in this small little community 460 families all having their kids give the same story, and how ridiculous that is. And so DeCamp, going back to Nebraska, says, I can say without reservation that in one Franklin related instance after another, there was sufficient evidence and corroboration available for anyone seeking it to back up the victims' tales. So this is something that was going on, or is going on, but was documented especially during the late 1980s, early 1990s. And it was exploding, and all of these witnesses were coming forward, and they didn't know each other in a lot of instances, except for like when they were going to the same daycare or whatnot. But in other instances, they didn't know each other. In Nebraska, this network used the Boys Town organization to be able to get its victims. Right. And they were telling the same stories. And over again, you had the Federal Department of Justice coming in and threatening witnesses, saying that if you don't recant your story, we're going to put you in prison. We're going to charge you with perjury. And in some cases, what they would threaten them, their family members are going to die if you don't recant. So this is the FBI coming and talking to these people saying, recant or you'll be harmed. Your family members will be harmed. One individual that was actually a part of the network, had the blackmail photos of people in high positions of power. And he had turned against the state and was going to release the photos that he had of these powerful people in these positions. And on his way back, he's a pilot and he had his own private plane. And on the way back where he was going to deliver this material, his plane disintegrates in midair, just falls apart, explodes in midair. And all of the documents that he had with him completely disappeared after the feds came in and investigated the crash. And so you have this nationwide. Going back to what I was saying was where the children were told to cry out to the Savior for deliverance and then come in and save them. There's an email in the Epstein files. Right. Where Epstein is discussing this with another individual, where one of their victims was saying that they felt safe because when they called out to Jesus for help to save them, and then the other guy responds to Epstein of, you should just dress up as Jesus next time, and then Epstein's like, oh, the old Jesus trick, and so these things aren't individual different abuse cases. This is a global network of evil people doing these things. It's not about blackmail. these people are dedicated to this cause.
Right.
Do they use it as blackmail? Kind of in the back of their mind, yes. But these people aren't involved in it because they're blackmailed. They're blackmailed as a way to keep them in it. And this is going back to the Skull and Bones Society and their ritual. In their when they get in their ritual initiation, they make them confess all of their sexual sins to the other members of the order as something to use against them if they ever turn against the Skull and Bones order. So same thing, Epstein, Franklin cover-up, the Glenn Pace memo perpetrators, they're not staying in it because of the blackmail. They didn't get into it because of the blackmail. They were already religiously dedicated to it. They just use these things in case they ever have a conscience, a change of heart, to ensure that they never turn against the network. If that
Okay.
makes sense.
Quick question. So
Yeah.
when you were talking about the well, first of all, why would the CIA, the director of the CIA, William Casey, I think you said, and then the FBI squash these investigations? William Colby. I'm sorry. Why would these organizations like CIA and FBI squash these investigations?
Well, because they were the ones directing them. So we now know with the Epstein files that not only was he working for other nations, but he was a CIA asset. In the Franklin cover-up in Nebraska, the guy Lawrence King, he was the person that is seen as the ringleader there, just like Epstein's seen as a ringleader. He was a CIA asset. So these guys, Lawrence King, Epstein, they're not the top dog of these networks. They are part of they are basically the organizers for the people above them to get them the so-called product that they need.
Okay, like the facilitators,
the children. Right, the facilitators. Right, exactly.
So
another example from the Epstein files, right? You have the Epstein paying for a young lady's college tuition if she gives him every single week a pint of Mormon blood. And so, I mean, that's in the emails? That is not something that's in the emails. Yeah.
Wow.
So every week she had to provide a pint of Mormon blood, and then he would pay for her college tuition.
That is unbelievable. I have to you got to send me that email.
Okay. I'll send that to you.
Yeah. So are the individuals from the FBI and the CIA, are they engaged in a spiritual, in some spiritual activity as well? Is that why they are protecting this and squashing these investigations?
So from the evidence that I've seen, you have a mix. You have some that, yes, are. You have some that that understand what's going on. And so to protect them, they are under threat. And so to be able to protect their families and their lives, they are complicit. They assist. They don't blow the whistle. And then people that they know they can't trust are kept out of it. And then if somebody that's kept out of it somehow begins to catch wind, then they start to either they silence them in some way, they threaten a family member, transfer them, fire them, kill them, whatever it is that they find some way to do something to keep them away. So that way they have levels of deniability, and because you have people that are like involved in the FBI and whatnot, and they'll be honest and they'll say, I don't know what you're talking about, you're crazy, I've never seen that, yada yada yada. Well, it's because of these layers of plausible deniability where they compartmentalize the individuals involved.
Wow. Okay. But it goes up to the top, like past the FBI.
All world leaders, presidents, absolutely.
Yeah.
With the Franklin cover-up, they were able to document that and had to come out in the newspapers, actually, a prostitution ring that the Secret Service was facilitating a male prostitution ring, bringing high-profile individuals into the White House after hours to be able to have their relations with these male prostitutes as well as young underage victims.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and so all the way up to the top, like Prince Andrew, right, with the Epstein files. This is this is all. And so like going back to, so that's all with this thing, we saw that going all the way up to world, national and world leaders. Whereas we have with the Glenn Pace memo, um, after, so this came out in the 90s. I'm not old enough, I'm a teenager barely when this thing comes out, don't know about it. So as an adult, I come across it. And so I want to investigate. I want to say, is this true? What's this Glenn Pace guy have to say? And so I dig up his home address, and I go and knock on his door and interview the guy. And he says, yes, that the memo is real. That he stopped looking into it as it started to unravel into naming more names than he was comfortable with being named. And he told me that it was worse than what he wrote, and that if all of the details were to come out, that the entire the entire structure of government within the state of Utah and in the Intermountain West, Arizona, Idaho, would be undermined and basically crumble because of the people that were involved in it. So that's why I go back to the fact that Glenn Pace, who did these interviews, says that very same thing. And then we see in these other investigations that it goes all the way up. So we got local government all the way up to international government.
Wow.
These people involved in it. And then in the state of Utah, the state legislature had a bill introduced to criminalize ritual abuse. Crazy that it's not already, on the books, but it's not. And the legislature refused to push it forward. They voted no on it.
Wow.
They killed the bill to outlaw ritual abuse.
Huh.
And then we have the judiciary in the state of Utah, who has prevented county attorneys from prosecuting cases in the state. And when they found and then they would either say that, oh no, you have a conflict of interest, you can't prosecute this, or they would say in other counties, what they would do is they would promote the county prosecutor to be a judge. So now the person that's left to prosecute is not going to prosecute, and the person that would is moved to a different position or blocked from prosecuting. And then you have sheriff's departments ensuring that nobody gets prosecuted as well. So
unbelievable.
You have every level involved in the cover-up.
Wow, you're blackpilling me. Going back.
I don't mean to do that.
I'll never
need to be involved.
Yeah, sure. As long as I believe in God, I will never be blackpilled.
Exactly.
As far as the Epstein emails, I saw in one of your videos. Well, you just talked about this. You talked about how in the Epstein emails, there's an email about him. Someone is telling some girl, if she prays to Jesus, he'll appear, and somebody responds, oh, the Jesus trick. You mentioned earlier in the Glenn Pace memo that one of part of these rituals where they worship Satan or call on Satan was they would talk about Jesus. Can you explain that and the parallels in the Epstein emails again?
Yeah. So what they would do is they would encourage the abused child to call out to Jesus to save them. So they're saying, call out to the Savior, and the child would call out to the Savior. And of course, and then the Savior didn't come, didn't save the girl, or didn't save the victim. And then after nothing happened, they weren't saved. They were continuing to be tortured. The individual would then say to the victim, now call out to Satan and ask him to save you. And after that, then a figure representing Satan would come in and rescue them from the abuse. And so and at that level of introduction into the network, saw Satan as their savior, as someone that would come and rescue them in their hour of need, as opposed to the Savior. And so they would lose trust in the Savior. They would lose trust in him as their Savior, and physically and spiritually, and they would turn that over to Satan.
And I'm assuming this figure that appeared out of nowhere was somebody that the torturer was
part of the network. Absolutely. Part of the coven, yes.
Okay. Another thing you mentioned as far as the Epstein emails was and I asked Alex Newman about this, but particularly your video and the emails that you showed, there's a lot of emails about jerky and pizza, and jerky is used in a very just weird, unconventional way. The jerky is talked about so many different times
Right.
in a way that seems like it's other than jerky that's being talked about.
The code word.
Right. And
Yeah.
pizza. Explain those terms, jerky and pizza.
Yeah. So pizza goes back to the debunked Pizzagate scandal from, about a decade ago, where there were emails, not Epstein emails, but there were the Wikipedia leaks with emails between people in government. You have the Clintons, you have the Obamas, you have, just Podestas, you have people just, and this isn't Republican Democrat, this is across the board.
Obama there was a lot of hot dogs mentioned in some
hot
of those.
Dogs. Spends like $400,000 on a hot dog party. That's just
Right.
not reasonable, right? I mean, I don't care how many hot dogs you're buying. You're not spending $400,000 on a hot dog party, even if you're buying, the fancy, chicken sausages.
Right.
You're still not spending $400,000 on hot dogs. And so, cheese pizza was shown as a code for child. And so cheese pizza, CP. So they would use the acronyms they would pick words with the same acronyms of what they really meant in the case